Every single one of us in this room carries labels that help define who we are. On the most basic level, we're all people. We're all somebody's children. Some of us may be parents. We could be academics, engineers, researchers, marketers, founders, you name it. These are the identities that define us and who we are in the world. Take a moment now to think about which labels define you on a high level. What would those labels be? Look at the person sitting next to you, the audience in this room. Do you think you have any labels in common? What if I told you that you're most likely forgetting an incredibly important one that connects us all? I'll start. I identify as a Georgian, a woman, an immigrant, tech founder, speaker, millennial, and a Canadian citizen. And that's the label I'd like to focus on today, being a citizen of a country. Or rather, now that we're living in one of the most transformative periods in modern day history, what does it mean to be a Canadian citizen? This label became personally important to me when I left my home country. And I'd like to tell you the tale of two government systems that had the biggest impact on my adult life and brought me to the point of becoming an entrepreneur in the immigration space. Like many of you in this room, I started off as an international student. Back in 2012, I arrived at Boston Airport with 2 suitcases and a dream to build a new life. Earning a respectable degree, followed by a well-paying job, and eventually a green card was the American dream that was sold to so many of us while we were growing up. I believed that if I completed those steps correctly, the government would reward me with a chance to continue working and living permanently in the country. These were all incorrect assumptions for me to make. Simply because a government system rewarded somebody in the past does not mean that it would reward me in the same way. And that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way during the 5 years that I spent in the US. After getting my undergraduate degree in management information systems, I secured a job as a business analyst at a software company. Everything was looking great, and my company was happy to sponsor my H-1B work visa. But what I hadn't realized at the time is that the US government only gave me a 30% chance of successfully securing that visa. And that was my only chance to continue working and living in the country and getting a green card. Unsurprisingly, I didn't get the visa, which meant I had to leave the US in under 2 months and figure out who I am in the world without my American dream. It seemed like I had done everything correctly. I paid tuition and taxes, I had a job, I worked in an in-demand sector, and yet the system spurned me. A year later, I ended up in Canada completely unplanned, working with the same employer. This is a country I'd never even thought of before, but it gave me the work permit I was looking for and the opportunity to prove myself. And incredibly, a year later, this country rewarded me with a permanent residence and a chance at a new life. A gift I couldn't believe was possible. Based on my job, potential for economic contribution, and past achievements, Canada deemed me as worthwhile to stay. This had such a profound impact on my life that I chose to dedicate a significant portion of my professional life to improving immigration systems, to help people who follow the country's rules receive a predictable and understandable outcome for their immigration. Because as you can see, these immigration systems can either be uplifting or detrimental, both to the immigrants and the countries that are or are not supporting them. Actually, a great case study of an immigration system is Canada from 2015 through 2025. Over the span of 10 years, this system has seen it all, both the highs and the lows. In 2015, Canada introduced, in my biased opinion, one of the best programs for attracting and bringing in skilled workers called Express Entry. Over the first few years, many talented, hard-working immigrants came into the country and successfully settled. This put Canada as a destination on the map, both for highly skilled workers and international students alike, for they know that there was an understandable, stable pathway for them to earn permanent residence. The country was welcoming and supportive of immigrants, and the immigration system was built with a solid logic in mind, scoring and ranking skilled applicants in real time. A true merit-based approach. However, As with any functional system, it required an adjustment based on new learnings and data analysis. But instead of evaluating the results of the first few years, the government turned a blind eye to a few loopholes that bad actors began exploiting. And to complicate matters further, immigration targets more than doubled since then. One of the biggest loopholes and abuses of the system was the international student and college scandal, which was marketed as a quick and simple pathway to permanent residence in Canada. As a result, we're seeing the highest negative sentiment towards immigration in Canada's modern history. To solve this, the government is executing a radical overcorrection. And as a result, we're seeing applicants who used to check off the boxes be neglected, and new applicants are being prioritized according to internal politics. This rift is in fact so wide that even I, who was an example of the system working well in 2019, would not have been able to get permanent residence in Canada today. And I'm seeing the fallout of the system when the people who are the best candidates to be rewarded by it are now being spurned and sent away. Simply put, we have no idea what is going on anymore. So now, let's dive into a more concrete example of illogical policymaking. On the right side, you can see a screenshot of the immigration levels plan published by Immigration Canada last November. You might notice the French-speaking immigration target 8.5% outlined, roughly 29,000 people. You might also notice the In Canada focus as a separate line item. On the left side, I summarized all of the draws conducted by Immigration Canada for different programs this year. With the results of the past week, we have seen over 36,000 invitations sent to the French-speaking category just this year, which is significantly above the original target. Not to mention, none of these French speakers are allowed to settle in Quebec, only in the rest of Canada. This might seem like a politically strategic move, but let's think about it. How well can the Canadian economy absorb and provide employment opportunities to these primarily French speakers outside of Quebec? Not to mention, Quebec has its own immigration plan and quotas that have nothing to do with the federal ones. But do you see a single STEM draw on that list? Most of the Canadian educated skilled workers, including University of Waterloo grads by the way, are under the Canadian Experience Class program, which has seen significantly less movement than the French-speaking one this year. We're talking about people who have Canadian work experience and are already integrated into our economy. But yet, they're at a disadvantage and have a significantly less chance of securing permanent residence simply because they don't speak French. Let that sink in. According to the Economics of Canadian Immigration Levels, a paper published by the Canadian Journal of Economics, immigration levels are determined by political processes and consultations, not by a centralized economic model. I have personally done research and spoken to experts in the immigration space regarding how the government comes up with targets for different immigrant admissions. And while everyone believes there's some economic consideration, there doesn't seem to be a comprehensive data-driven process. We now have almost 10 years of active immigration data and outcomes that we can evaluate. We can evaluate the impact of past immigration policy on an economic, infrastructure, and societal level. Yet, do we see the government utilizing any of the more advanced data modeling tools to make more of these informed decisions? Not that I or any of the experts in the space are aware of. At this point, we discussed a couple of policies. Now, let's dive into their impact. What exactly are we losing by not modernizing the government decision-making process? Well, for starters, if you think about it, government policy affects almost everything around you, from the wait times to healthcare to fostering a positive environment for startup and business growth. One of the main impacts I can think of from the immigration policy issue is talent. And this is a double-edged sword where both sides are now negative. The worse the economic conditions in Canada, the more highly skilled Canadians and founders are motivated to move south for better economic and financial opportunities. This is no news since we've seen outmigration into the US for most of Canada's modern history. This resulted in companies such as Uber and Slack being co-founded by Canadians in the US. It's actually almost a running joke on social media that modern day San Francisco is a Canadian, specifically a University of Waterloo wrapper. Although this is a new development, Canada had a counterbalance that worked well for a few years. The immigration policy at its height gave birth to immigrant entrepreneurs who began to build businesses in the country. In fact, immigrants are more likely to start a new business, and in 2022, 25% of incorporated businesses in Canada were owned by first-generation immigrants. So if we mismanage skilled immigration as a nation, what other impacts do you think it might have? Another one I can think of is the Startup Visa program, which was meant to attract businesses and top entrepreneurs globally and bring them into the country. The program basically went defunct this year. The processing time estimate started at 1 year, went up to 4 years, and now we're seeing a mind-boggling 10 years on the Immigration Canada website. It started off with good intentions and was misused as a permanent residence loophole by bad actors. Once the government figured that out, they overcorrected in a way that's affecting the businesses that were legitimately pursuing the process. My final example of negative policy-making impact is the effect it has on Canadian success. This isn't solely related to immigration decisions, but it's one of the biggest ones I discovered recently. Let's take a look at the list of top 100 companies by market cap globally. See how many of them are from Canada. Not even a single one in the top 25 or 50. Our first example is Shopify at 70, while the US obviously dominates most of that list. As aspiring builders and entrepreneurs, isn't that a bit disappointing to note? This is a direct result of miscalculated decision making. So you might wonder, why is now the best time to be having this conversation? Well, we live in one of the most transformative periods for technology development in modern day history. With the advent of AI, we're seeing different sectors, including the government, opening their doors to this novel technology. One of our first examples is actually Canada itself. This year, we appointed our very first Minister of AI and Digital Innovation. This signals that the government does plan to prioritize AI in the future of the country. Or you might have heard of Albania appointing its first AI-generated minister. It's focused on eliminating corruption in public procurement. Could you have imagined something like this happening 5 years ago? Or even less likely 10 years ago? That's how quickly we're moving. Or if we look at the US, we have companies like Palantir. They're using AI for defense and working closely with the government. They tie together fragmented data to model war zones and prepare for threats. A data analytics and modeling approach that I believe could be used for immigration policy impact analysis as well. We're living in a time when governments are waking up to AI, but the direction they take with it isn't guaranteed, and I believe we can help them with choosing the right one. So what can we do to play a part in the direction our government is taking, to truly make an impact on policy making? Well, one of the main problems is that most of us don't give government policy a second thought. Some of us may go vote, many don't even care to do so. We might listen to the news, but we often forget what we heard on the very same day. Just think about it. When was the last time you really read into a new law the government introduced? That is, until it affects you. Or even when it does affect you, just how much does it have to before you actually begin to care? But we don't have to be this way. This room holds the country's future top builders, a generation that has the full potential to impact the direction of any project that they get involved in. And you know what's the best part? You don't have to forsake your career in the private sector in order to make an impact. We have nonpartisan organizations such as Build Canada now on the rise. It's a group of people that just want to do things and make a change. They educate the government regarding policies and causes that they believe are most relevant at this time. The Canadian government also regularly puts out surveys regarding important policy decisions. We can begin monitoring and actively filling them out. We all have access to our MPs, If a cause is very important to us, we can reach out to them and make our voices be heard. And most importantly, we can vote consistently, regularly, and on every level, from mayoral to provincial to federal. For context, Toronto's 2023 mayor election only had 38% voter turnout. And finally, I think it would be incredibly interesting to see the builders in this very room create AI technology that can be implemented by the government to solve some of the pressing data analysis based issues I outlined during my talk today, starting with the immigration policy modeling. Everything can be rethought, rebuilt, and reimagined. We now have the tools to do this. What we need is upgraded thinking. We can't keep accepting systems that are no longer serving us when we have everything in our disposal to redesign them. This is our opportunity to become the first generation that uses AI and data analysis not just to build products, but to build nations. Because we're not just working professionals, we're also citizens. And I would like to remind you that as citizens, we vote, we influence policy, we contribute to the economy. Some of us create, others innovate, educate, or engage in various types of meaningful work. Regardless, I believe we could all come together to build the kind of country we actually want to live in. So take a moment now to think back to those labels you defined yourself with at the beginning of this talk. Maybe now it's time to add one more label: builder of a better system, empowered citizen, changemaker. And most importantly, consider what would happen if you didn't. Thank you.